Donald Trump is set to have a very busy 2024. He is facing 4 criminal cases while also mounting another run at the White House. Today, a judge has selected March 4th as the start of Trump's federal election criminal trial. A day later, Super Tuesday, where the Republicans have primaries and caucuses scheduled in 15 states. 2 weeks later, Trump's New York falsified business records trial is scheduled to begin on March 25th. Fast forward 2 months. Trump's trial in the classified documents case is scheduled to begin on May 20th. And that list does not include the criminal case in Georgia. We're waiting to hear when exactly that case will go to trial. Philip Bump is a national columnist at the Washington Post. He is in New York right now. Philip, thank you for joining us. My head's spinning there. We're trying to figure out the schedule here. 4 criminal trials and a campaign for president. 2024 is going to be a presidential election campaign like none other. What are your thoughts on Trump's calendar next year?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was already this is scheduled to be a pretty dramatic year, what with Donald Trump running it all. But yes, the fact that he has these criminal trials that are looming is certainly going to mix things up. I mean, I will say this, and I wrote about this today. I think that Donald Trump is unusually lucky in the way that he campaigns allows him a lot of space to make court appearances. This is not a guy who goes and hunkers down in New Hampshire and, makes the rounds at the diners and sits for town halls. He's never done that. He's never had to do that. He's been a celebrity since he first announced in 2015. His campaign style in 2020, in part because of the pandemic, but in part because he liked it, was he'd simply fly into a place, hold an event, and fly back out. That's actually very advantageous. If that's what he plans to do in 2024, if he's got a court hearing in the morning in Washington, D.C., he can then fly into some other state, have a rally, and then fly back home. It fits very nicely with the way he campaigns already. So even beyond the legal aspects of it, I'm not sure that it actually does that much damage to him politically.
Well, yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, like the logistics of how one campaigns while also juggling these trials. Of course, he loves those big rallies. How do you anticipate the campaign is going to be affected by this from a logistical standpoint? Do you see some things being virtual, or do you see those number of rallies reduced?
No, I mean, honestly, it's, I went back and actually looked at the number of rallies and campaign events he held in 2016, and he held far fewer than his competitors. Again, because he didn't have to. He doesn't have to go out and, present his policy ideas. This is not a guy who is, running as a wonk. He doesn't need to impress upon people all of his various strategies for passing legislation. He just goes out and gets people ginned up. I do think it's going to be important for him to hold those rallies because he's going to need money. That's, I think, one of the ways in which this is really going to be looming over him is it's very expensive to have all these lawyers and to pay for a lot of his co-defendants in order to make sure they stay loyal to him. So that, I think, will be actually an important aspect of it. But, if he has, for example, a court date down in Florida, it's an hour flight to go to Georgia for a rally that night, right? And then to fly back home, which is what he was in the practice of doing already. So I'm not sure that it really will be that much of an impediment.
Well, obviously he has been campaign fundraising on this already. From your perspective, are these trials going to help or hurt the former president in his bid for the nomination? And then beyond that, if he is the nominee, how does this look in a general election? Will it hurt or help him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing to keep in mind is he's doing way better in the polls now than he was in 2015, 2016 at the same point in time. He never got over 50% in the polls in the 2016 nominating cycle. It's very possible this whole thing's wrapped up by the middle of March. More than half of the delegates at stake will have already been assigned by about March 15th. So it's possible it's shortly after he starts his trial in the D.C. case that he will have already gotten the nomination. I think one of the things we've seen is the 2 local cases, the one in New York and the one in Georgia, not the federal cases, have actually been a big spur for him for enthusiasm. The one in Manhattan really helped him surge to the lead in the polls. It looks as though he's going to be fundraising well off this Georgia one. The Georgia one, we don't know when that's going to go to trial, but the Manhattan one will be going to trial in late March, as you mentioned, and that may provide another spur. Now, all of that said, he's in very good position, as he has been for some time, for the nomination for his party. In a general election, it's hard to say. I mean, I think it certainly would be the case that a Republican who wasn't currently facing 4 indictments and or potentially having already been convicted of a crime would fare better against Joe Biden in November. But you have to remember, Donald Trump has this core base of support that's really enthusiastic about him and no one else. It's part of the reason why Republicans did badly in 2018 and 2022. Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot. And so if Donald Trump is on the ballot in 2024, there's a segment of the Republican Party or of the Republican base that's going to come out and vote. And that if he weren't on the ballot, if he lost the nomination, probably wouldn't come out and vote. Which, when we're talking about these razor-thin margins we consistently see in the United States elections, that could be the difference maker. And I'm not sure that that base of support is going to be turned off simply because he's been convicted of a few crimes that they don't think were crimes.
I was watching the debate the other day without him there. Is there anything that the other candidates can say right now to turn the tide in their direction? Because certainly we saw Chris Christie go after him and there were boos. So is there anything a candidate can say to break through?
Now, it is the most remarkable catch-22 I've ever seen in politics, is that you have to go after him because he's beating you in the race. But as soon as you go after him, you start faring worse, right? The people who are doing best against him are, at this point, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and Vivek Ramaswamy, the entrepreneur, both of whom have been very assiduous in bolstering Donald Trump's rhetoric. It's really since Ron DeSantis has started attacking Donald Trump that he's gone down in the polls, and Ramaswamy's gained as he's consistently praised Trump. If there were a way to attack him where they could actually do damage, I think you'd see everyone do it. But there hasn't been. There's been no way. There are a lot of people, it seemed, were sort of pinning their hopes on, okay, he's going to get indicted 4 times. That's got to be the thing that shakes his base loose. And sure enough, it didn't. It only made him stronger. I don't know if there is anything they can say. And that basically implies that Donald Trump will be the next nominee, barring some Deus Ex Machina, just suddenly appears out of nowhere and changes the trajectory of the race.